So we're going to start our meeting. I want to remind folks that this meeting is being recorded by DCTV, available to the public through DCTV. Your microphones are on, and so be mindful of your outside conversations and things like that. Michelle is finishing up over at the ZBA, and so we'll be here in about half an hour or so. But she's left me all we need to get started. First thing on our agenda is to approve the minutes. And if I can have a motion to approve the minutes as presented. And we received these via email.
Motion.
Second.
Okay, any other additions, corrections to the minutes? All right. All in favor?
Aye.
One abstention.
And one abstention, John's abstention.
I don't recall reading the minutes, so I'm not gonna vote on something
Okay.
I haven't read yet.
Very good. All right.
Can't find it in my email, so I don't know if it got deleted or what.
Yeah.
It was. Sent it last week. Sometime like that.
Okay, we also have a few invoices to approve payment. One of these is for the Mendes Montero house, total of $32,148.63. It's submitted by Partners in Housing, which includes attorney fees, project management, architecture, and consultation and engineering costs for the project as they are preparing construction for a construction bid. So it's finishing the construction documents and getting everything in order for putting the project out to bid. I'll pass that along. Folks can take a look at that. And have an invoice from the Dartmouth Heritage Trail Project for $1,350. And that is for the Lincoln Park and Pascomantic kiosks. And if that, I don't know if anybody's gone by and stopped. I got to pull over and see the Pascomantic
I haven't
one.
read them yet, but I certainly.
Looks
seen
really interesting. There's that one, I think, talks about the indigenous history in the town. So that one looks really interesting. There's a kind of a graphic of a tree and the roots with different indigenous peoples. So yeah, I got to pull over one of my trips along there and take a look at it. And I'll pass that on to you. Thank you. Also, we did receive Mr. Savastano's time breakdown for the invoice that was presented last month, and so I signed off on that one. Also wanted to distribute some cookies and goodies for the New Year's. If you pass that down, don't sign anything, but do take something if you'd like. Gretchen made those, so they're worthy.
Thank you.
If you think you can bribe me, you're back.
Yeah.
Bribe me, but
Yeah,
I'm gonna take a lot more than a cookie.
not a bad habit. Well, if I bring the scones one day,
I don't know about
you'll
that.
definitely
You know
be
something?
here.
He's gonna bribe me. Watch this.
Joe's taking 7 of them.
There you
I
go.
think we
Please,
got him on
please do.
board.
Please do.
This looks
It's the least we can do for all your hard work. And believe me, it's the least.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
We'll just keep them down here for security purposes.
So, I also received an email from Stuart McGregor indicating that he feels that this time, with all the other demands on his time from family and work, that he feels that it's time for him to step down from the committee.
Yeah.
I wrote to him and asked if he would consider tendering a resignation effective April.
Send him some cookies.
Yeah, and I didn't mention the cookies, but I might, if I hadn't heard.
Bring them back.
I asked if he would consider tendering resignation effective April, which would give us, one, he would be present and available to for our February and March meetings, which we're gonna process applications, so that's pretty important. And second, that would probably give us a little bit of leg up on trying to find someone to take his place. And I know that one of the places, I'd reach out to the Ag Commission and say, we said if we knew of a vacancy for an at-large member, we'd let you know. And so that would also give them a chance to see if any of the Ag Commission members were interested in. And so, I haven't heard back from Stuart, but hopefully he's able to do that. But I wanted to let folks know. Could I have one of the cookies? I didn't take one for myself. Thank you.
The molasses ones are excellent.
All right, so you didn't take all the good
You want
ones.
me to pass these back, or do you want to have?
Yes, we need motions, and then they can come back.
Milk would've gone a long way, buddy.
It would have been, yeah. Little pillow.
I have
blanket.
coffee, I'll share if you want me to pour. So I'd like to make a motion then to approve the payment to Signature Signs for $1,350.
Second.
Maybe a second?
Second.
All right, sorry. All in favor?
Aye.
All right.
And then I'd like to also make a motion for a payment to Partners in Housing for $32,148.63.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
It's unanimous. Thank you. Okay. The CPC received an open meeting law complaint. It's dated, was December 28th, regarding our meeting that was held in December 12th. What I would like to do is, when we're ready, is to entertain a motion to go into the executive session. The purpose of the executive session is going to be to discuss the complaint and a response to the complaint. And we will then return back to after we leave executive session, we will then return back to our regular open meeting session. So if I could entertain a motion to go into executive session, Mr. Savastano gave me the kind of the legal reference. That would be our session is pursuant to Mass General Laws 30A, Section 21, to address the open meeting law complaint that was dated December 28th and filed by Mr. Patrick Higgins, pursuant to Chapter 30A, Section 21A1.
Buddy, before we vote, I
Yes.
think the correspondence needs to be read into the record. That's public information. There's no reason why the public
Thank you. I will do that.
can't hear the complaint, and, certainly discussion and how we handle it is executive session, but
Okay, let me do that. So this is filed on the open meeting law complaint form by Mr. Higgins. The Dartmouth Community Preservation Committee violated the open meeting law as follows. Howard Baker Smith, chairperson, did not announce that the meeting was being recorded as required by Section 20F of the Open Meeting Law. See video at, and then there's the YouTube address for the DCTV recording of our meeting. 2, the posted agenda does not contain the date and the time that the meeting was posted, that the agenda for the meeting was posted. The complainant has responded to the question of what action do you want the public body to take in response to your complaint. And the response is, all members must attend a formal open meeting law webinar without delay. Schedule can be found at mass.gov site. Chairman must announce that the meeting is being recorded as required by Section 20F of the Open Meeting Law. And the chairman must ensure that the posted agenda has the date and time that the meeting was posted, and check to make sure that the meeting was posted 48 hours in advance. If the date and time information are not on the posted agenda, the chairman must not convene the illegal meeting and reschedule to a properly posted agenda that contains the date and time it was posted on it. Okay, great, thank you. So that's the complaint that was received.
Make a motion, we go into executive session pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 30, Section A, Section 21, to discuss the open meeting law complaint dated December 28, 23, filed by Mr. Patrick Higgins, Mass General Law, Chapter 30, Section 21A, 1.
Second.
All right, any discussion, other questions? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Unanimous, thank you. So the recording will stop, and excuse yourself, that'd be great. So we are back out of executive session. However, the chairperson, that'd be me, realized that did not properly take the vote to go into executive session. My apologies. I think this is only the second time I've done executive session in all my years here. So I want to make sure we do this right. So I'm going to indulge the committee to re-enter executive session. We're going to revisit the issue. So I'm going to repeat it all, so we do it right. And that's how I learn. So we need to go into executive session, and we are in open session now. And the purpose is to entertain the open meeting law complaint that was received. And this was filed by Patrick Higgins on December 28th, 2023. And we would go into executive session pursuant to Mass General Laws, Chapter 38, Section 21. Mr. Higgins has filed a complaint, and the nature of the complaint is, excuse me, here's that piece of paper. That the Dartmouth Community Preservation Committee violated the open meeting law as follows. Number 1, Howard Baker Smith, chairperson, did not announce that the meeting was being recorded as required by Section 20F of the open meeting law. The video of which is available at the DCTV YouTube site. 2, the posted agenda does not contain the date and time that the meeting was posted. In terms of what action is requested by the public body, Mr. Higgins wrote, all members must attend a formal open meeting law webinar without delay. Schedule can be found at the mass.gov site for open meeting law trainings. The chairman must announce that the meeting is being recorded as required by Section 20F of the open meeting law. And the chairman must ensure that the posted agenda has the date and time that the meeting was posted, and check to make sure that the meeting was posted 48 hours in advance. If the date and time information are not on the posted agenda, the chairman must not convene the legal meeting and reschedule to a properly posted agenda that contains the date and time it was posted on it. So, I'd like to entertain, we are going to go into executive session, and then we will reconvene back to open session. And so I'd like to take a roll call vote on the motion, on a motion to go into executive session. First, can I have someone make that motion, go into executive session?
So moved.
Second.
And a second. Okay, Mike?
Yes.
And
John Souza, yes?
Joe Viera, yes.
Al Ross, yes.
Margaret Sweet, yes.
And Howard Baker Smith, yes. All right, and then we will now go into executive session.
Good evening. I'm Chris Vitale, Assistant Town Administrator. Thank you for having me back and getting this rescheduled. I appreciate it. So if this turns back on, there we go. So I had talked with Buddy, and annually I know that we come before you, kind of give you an update on some of the different housing initiatives that CPC is involved with the town. And so I just want to jump right and get started. So through this presentation, I'm going to be giving an update on the home rehabilitation program, the housing assistance purchase program, and the application you have before you tonight, which is our 5-year update to our housing production plan. So here on this slide behind me, you can see some of the fast facts of the program to date. So right now with the home rehab program, we have a total of 15 loans that we've issued over the years, 7 of which that are outstanding. The dollar amount that's outstanding is just over $307,000. We've recaptured 8 loans to date, totaling just over $124,000. Through the housing assistance program, we've had 2 different applications that we've supported. And over the years, we've had consulting fees of just over $40,000. And lastly, as part of the application, and we can take that up later, or we can ask questions as we go along, but with this 5-year update, we have been working with SERPID on a cost proposal and a draft scope of work. So that's included in your packet for this evening, and I can go over some of the details of that as well. But that total project cost is just under $45,000. And in my application, I was asking for partial funding through CPC.
Before you leave that slide, Chris,
Of course.
Can you tell us what the, when was the conceived date of those programs? So with total loans funded, with 15, is that 1 year, 5 years, 10 years? What is that?
So that is from the early 2000s, but closer to the 2010 period. Now, there was a few years where there was an overlap between CDBG funds being used for this program and CPC funds being used. But it's the late 2000s where we started accepting these
So
applications.
about 1 a year.
Yeah, just about.
And then the other one, the housing assistance program?
So housing assistance, so you can see here, the 2, one was in FY18 and one was in FY20.
And so did the program start in 18?
So the program, and all this information is actually further on in the presentation.
Okay.
But I believe the program was approved in 2017.
So not a good track record.
Yeah, so, and
Not.
That's a
you know,
good segue.
No
No,
fault
that's
to
a-
yourself. I mean,
no,
there's
great
plenty
point.
of room for improvements that you could make. You know.
that's a very good segue. So with that, at the top of the slide, you can see the total budget that we have available currently. So for the loan program, we have just over $150,000 available for new applications that were to come in. And for administrative funds, we have just under 15,000. So that funding would be for inspection services, and other consultants we may need to have come in if we were to develop a scope of work for repair. So the background on this, the program structured as a deferred payment loan to eligible properties for eligible property repairs. So I know there was a lot of discussion late last year with regards to, well, what type of activities could qualify under this program? And we got it confirmed through council that it's preservation activities. So activities that involve the structural integrity of the home. So that includes roofs, siding, windows, but also building systems as well. So HVAC and things that, again, if it were to fail, it would affect the integrity of the home. So this past year, with support from this group as well as the select board, there were modifications that were approved to the program. So first, we increased the funding availability to $50,000 per project. We are in the process of developing a new online application and guidebook, which you saw a draft of the last time I was here. We worked on simplifying the repayment terms. We worked with council on the eligibility criteria, and they're currently in the process of updating the contracts. So one of the takeaways the last time I was here was, hey, does the contract language protect the town? Does it have all of the different language that we need in there with regards to, CPC funds being used? And the answer was, we needed to retake a look at those. So my hope was to have the program actually up before the holidays. Unfortunately, holidays got in the way. My hope is that we can have this program up by the end of the month. So the last of the contracts are with our council right now, but coming out of it, I'll feel very confident that, again, we'll have all the documentation we need that's been vetted by council for the first time in quite a few years, and we'll be in very good shape going forward. So just on that note, this past year, we did have one qualified applicant that applied prior to me starting. Over the summer, he withdrew his application. We never heard back on that. But in, I guess, some promising news, we have 8 pending applications. So as soon as we open the program, we have 8 families that have said, hey, we want to put in for applications. So I think that's very encouraging. To your point, when you say, how many applications have we seen in years past? So we're already off to a good start this
Well,
upcoming
Mike,
year.
it's not the applications, how many
Successful, absolutely.
is the key measure in my, it's.
Certainly. So for the Housing Assistance Program, it was created in 2016 with approval from the state, provides financial assistance to financially eligible home buyers. In exchange, we place a affordable deed rider on their properties. So that's a permanent deed rider. It adds to our affordable housing stock. So this past year, we made the decision to pause the program, and you'll see why in my next slide. But the housing market really has needed to stabilize, both on the cost of a single family home as well as with the mortgage interest rates. Now, over the last couple months, it's been very encouraging, and just based on what we've seen and what we've read is that the rates are going to really start to come down a little bit in the second half of the year. And really the goal of the Housing Trust is to bring on a consultant this year to take a look at the program as we have it outlined. And I think what we want to make sure is that we don't run into the same situation again in the future if there is market volatility. We really want to develop a program so that regardless of the condition of the housing market, this program is there to help the residents within the community. So I think once we really look at a scope of work for those consultant services, they take a look at kind of the market conditions and the scenario that occurred over the last 18 months. Our hope is that we'll have that program structure and we'll set ourselves up better going forward. So, talking with our town administrator, we're hoping that conversation really kicks off in the next month and a half or so.
Chris, is the income guidelines for the assistance purchase program the same as like the rehab program?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
What is it like 80% of AMI?
80%.
80, okay, thank you.
And so as I said before from the last slide, you can see these two trends and really why we had to do the pause. So the trend on the left is the mortgage interest rates for fixed rate over the last 30 year. There's a 30-year trend and 15-year trend. This is the 3-year trend, so you can see from May 2021 up until this month. You can kind of just see what the town's been working with and why this was an issue and why it really priced a lot of people out of the market. You can see that that trend is starting to come down now, which is again an encouraging side. The two graphs on the right are the sales price in Dartmouth of homes. Now this is the 10-year trend. This was put out by the Massachusetts Association of Realtors. The real, I guess, focus for us has been, I guess, the last half of this graph. That's been over the last 3 years. And you can see that that's really shot up significantly. So again, the price of homes here in Dartmouth has, again, gone up considerably, which means for a program like this, it just means more funding would need to be applied for each project. So moving on to the housing production plan.
Before you go, so, just help us, for what would it be, typical income for like a household of, say, like 4 or something to qualify?
So every year, and unfortunately I don't have a 4-person household, but for starting at 1 person,
Okay,
it's
yeah.
about 55,000, and then it progresses up there from there. So I think, oh gosh, you're gonna quote me on this. It's probably gonna be around 80 to 85 for a family of 4. Who would qualify at that threshold, but for one family, it's about 55, and then it goes up incrementally for every member of the household. So, I think in the past, especially with the home repair program, you would see, it might be someone who's on a fixed income, might have a disability, might not be working full time, so might qualify for that income bracket.
Because with and kind of the average price of a house now in Dartmouth, and that chart was kind of pushing into.
Yeah, so it's a little small on my screen, but we were pushing right around, what is that, 600,000?
Right.
Yeah, so you got 600,000.
Yeah.
Because I think this program, typically, the couple of loans that it's, or purchases it's assisted with, has generally been about 150,000
That's right.
per household.
That's right.
But with interest rates where they are and houses priced around 600,000 and.
Yeah, it kind of prices you out on both sides of
That's gonna be,
the
150 is not gonna be a deep enough.
yeah.
How much of a percentage do you give on the houses when they're purchasing it?
So we have traditionally given 20%.
20% down, okay. Which eliminates the and all that.
Yeah, and also, the less you put down, the more your monthly is, which if you're, again, qualifying for the program, that's gonna be difficult for them.
That's gonna be tough.
Yeah, so that's why really having a consultant come in, looking at the market today, obviously when this was created in 2016, the housing market, the conditions were a lot different than now. And so, again, we're gonna try and set up the program in a way where we're maximizing the dollar, we're helping as many families as we can, and also, if the market does downturn in the future, we're insulating ourselves so we don't have to come back to the drawing board and say, what do we need to change again? Not to say that there can't be improvements, but it's unfortunate we had to pause the program, but unfortunately that's just,
Okay.
state of the economy right now. Any more questions on that one? All right. So moving on to the housing production plan, this is a community strategy for meeting the housing needs, and really that is our 10% requirement of affordable housing in the community. The last plan was approved in 2019. It's actually set to expire next month. So if you can see here a little bit lower, there's some quick facts. So the year-round number of housing units here in the community is 12,547. So that would put our 10% threshold at 1,255. Right now, we are at 7.81%, and to fill the gap, we would need 275 units. So I did just check on that recently, just to make sure those numbers are up to date.
Does that include the new building over by Target? Is that affordable housing there?
So that does not include the preserve, and actually, that's right here on this slide. So, since twenty
Oh,
nineteen.
I'm sorry, I wasn't.
Oh, no, no,
I didn't realize it was called
right
that.
on
Nope, I was
My
anticipating,
fault.
yeah, I was anticipating that. So since 2019, from our first housing production plan, the number of year-round units has gone up by 772. But unfortunately for our housing inventory, it hasn't kept up with that pace, so our percentage actually went down. One piece of that is the fact that the preserve isn't factored into our percentage yet.
Preserve is the ledge property? Reed Road and Route 6, where's the preserve?
Crossroad,
Oh, Target,
Target.
Crossroad.
right by the crossroad of the, storage place, across from York Street.
Yeah.
Where
Oh,
was-
I didn't know that was affordable, that apartment building there?
So a percentage is, so
Oh,
I
that-
think
that's-
it's,
About, I'm sorry, I don't know which one that we're
Other
talking
side of
about.
the,
Doris is
Nissan
building
dealership.
that,
Oh, that is affordable housing?
10%.
so there's a percentage of, it went through the comprehensive permit process. As part of that, a percentage of that community is going to be affordable housing.
Oh, okay.
It's going to help with our stock. It won't get us to 10%.
That's a small number, what are
That is
that,
a
24
small-
units, so
yeah.
there's, in there are 12 units, I mean, it's not very big.
So it's multi-phased for the preserve. Now, ultimately, when that full project is done, and again, because it really still is in
We're
development.
talking two different places then.
Yeah, I
The
think so.
preserve has gotta be Reed Road and Route 6.
I might be, I'll pull the address after
The,
this.
Yeah,
the
that
the
Target
property
one is
at
limited.
Target, that's
That's a standalone.
that's an
Yeah.
one standalone apartment building at the most, I don't even know if it's that big, 24 units.
I have my
don't know.
addresses.
Thinking of one behind the ledge.
He's targeting,
He's the one behind
students.
Dartmouth Woods and the ledge, I think, the one at the access behind the
So
junkyard.
that's gonna be more substantial, I don't know what those numbers came
I'll
out.
pull up the address on that,
Yeah.
yeah, and maybe that's on my,
Yeah.
my error, but I did confirm, with Serped, just that it didn't get added to our SHI yet.
Because there is assisted living called the Preserve right there
Where?
on Cross Road.
Yeah.
Yeah, near the power
No,
plant.
that's Autumn Glen,
On,
That's on,
River's old Westport Road?
no, that's Cedars.
that's Cedars.
Yeah,
Then
I
it's
think
one
the
over here on
Preserve
Slocum
is,
Road.
The preserve is a subdivision that Bobby Long built out.
yeah, but I think there's also a assisted living.
Not on Cross Road.
Not
that's
that way?
Autumn Glen,
Okay.
no, no.
Right.
The one
There
here on
is one,
Slocum
there
Road.
is one on Crossroads.
So Chris, your point is the,
Our percentage isn't 7.81, but
but
it's
it
not.
doesn't include
It
these
does
new
not.
units that will include. And there's rumbling that, Ken Steen is looking to do something off Fons Corner Road,
So, yeah, so
behind
the,
the marijuana,
But I
is
thought
that
just
true?
apartments, I thought.
He's
we're
going
at
40B.
7.1 right
Oh,
now?
he's gonna do 40B?
7.8.
I heard that he was,
Yeah.
I don't know how true it is, but I thought I read something, 40B, no, he's not doing 40B,
Did-
okay.
Do you know if, when this 40B went in many years ago, did that drop off? The 40B
Which
development?
one we talking about? Jay
Slocum
Babonics?
Farms.
Babonics?
Slocum Farms.
Oh, Slocum Farms.
That was a 40B thing. That got us to our number back in the day. That was also a Holdenstein
Right.
project. Is that still part of it? Because I thought there was some type of covenants on those houses.
so it is still there, I think there's a few different factors to this, it's, what is our year-round housing, so as we develop more year-round housing, yeah, we have to
It
make
changes.
sure that our projects, we keep
Okay.
up with that trend, or else the percentage is gonna go down.
And
The other thing is, when we look at that subsidized housing inventory, some properties have fallen off. So the biggest contributor to this has actually been the old home repair program participants that we worked with through CDBG. A lot of those actually expired this past year, so we worked with a lot of different residents who came in, the liens were cleared off their property. And we have about a couple more years where there's a few more that are gonna be dropping off, but then at that point, those will be really off of our SHI.
This is that.
it's also
preserve.
loss of the apartments
32
from the
buildings.
Solimar, Sun and Sea.
They
Seabreeze
don't- they
Drive.
don't list the address.
So I don't have the expiration date on
32
those, I can pull
Well,
that
because that
up.
was the big, again, that was part
Yeah.
of our,
256
you know,
Oh, that's,
inventory. The places on there, there's a ton that were down there when they were built, but I thought, like, same thing, Crossroads,
yeah.
Crossroads Drive, the 10 units that were up there, they were also part of
Working on that for years.
our subsidized housing in the town when they built them.
Yeah,
I don't know
unfortunately.
I don't know how many years they last. I thought it may have been 20 years and they drop off after 20 years.
So there are, when you look at the subsidized housing inventory, unfortunately, I don't have it in front of me tonight,
Okay.
so I don't wanna give you misinformation. But with that being said, there's different subsidizing authorities, there are different terms associated with each of those different properties. I'm happy to forward that along to you guys, just so you have it. It is going to be something as we look forward, that's definitely gonna be something that's gonna be talked about as we look towards the next plan, which I guess will bring me to my next slide. Working with Serpide, they have different tiers of really how in-depth do we want to go with this housing production plan. Tier 1 was about 25,000, and what I'm proposing is their tier 3. And that is a little more intensive. It looks a lot about the mortgage, the housing trends, mortgage trends for the area. It provides a little more data to us, and I think right now, especially with coming out of the pandemic, coming out of the last year with the market and where it's been, I think it's important that we have a clean slate. The other thing is when we look at our past plan, a lot of the goals that were identified in that 2019 plan, you have it in your handout. Unfortunately, a lot of those action.
Can I pass that around?
Please, yes,
Okay.
please. You can see that there wasn't movement.
What tier was this plan? Was this a 1, a 2?
So I don't have the original proposal from 2019,
Yeah, I
and
understand.
I don't know if they changed their pricing at the time. But this tier 3, these different bullet points are the different elements that go into the tier 3 plan.
Okay.
And I know that one of the big things with the tier 3 is public participation. A lot of different workshops, stakeholder conversations, and especially, having a group like this, part of the conversation, again, I think having more discussion between these various boards and committees is gonna be really important as we develop the new plan, just because whatever we put on paper, I actually wanna make sure it's achievable. And I wanna make sure, when we look at the makeup of the different boards and commissions, did they look at these things? Was there, new membership on some of the boards and commissions that resulted in them taking a different approach to some of these projects, or was there a lack of interest in some of these? Part of this update would be taking a look at these other goals, having stakeholder conversations to say, why didn't this happen? And there might be reason behind some of these things. Or it might just be, it was COVID, we just were swamped with other things, but we really won't know that until we have those different stakeholder discussions. But again, I think with the new team, the new staff in the planning office, our town administrator office, again, I think we want to take a really fresh look at this because housing is incredibly important, especially now. We want to make sure we have the best plan going forward. So that's really everything I had on those subjects, but happy to answer questions from the group here.
Questions, comments on,
I would just like the information to be forwarded to Michelle so we can get it, that
Sure.
you
yeah, very
promised.
nice
Yeah,
presentation.
That would be really nice.
absolutely. Yeah,
Thank you.
happy to forward this over.
So going back to the timing real quick, so we're working with Serpide.
Yes.
So are these sort of questions, looking at the previous housing production plan, where it says implemented, affordable housing units produced, are those gonna be answered prior to engaging them? Or is it gonna be answered as part of this process of outreach and conversation?
So prior to this meeting, Buddy had asked that I provide an update just again based on what I could research and talk to the different staff here about, and obviously look at town meeting warrants and things of that nature. So that's my personal update. But I think what's missing from that spreadsheet is the why. And
Yeah.
was there any action taken, and was it stopped? Was it just dropped altogether? You know, and when we go for the 2024 update, that's where the consultant will come in and they'll spearhead those conversations. And make sure that they're compiling it and formatting it in a way where it'll be a section of the 2024 plan.
Yeah, I think so, so this is kind of, if you will, kind of the report card on what was done from the previous plan.
Right, right.
And as I was saying to Chris, is that this isn't about kind of looking backwards and kind of wringing our hands about that. It's really kind of, if you look at these things, many of these recommendations, it's reasonable to think would come up again because they're very, very typical recommendations about how to promote affordable housing in communities. So the zoning stuff is usually right up there. Even Boston is proposing to redo their zoning because the zoning regulations make it too difficult to produce affordable housing. So I think it's helpful because then the why is part of the exploration. If these are gonna come up again, then why, these are good recommendations. We need to then understand, well, they didn't happen in the previous 5 years. What do we need to do to make it more likely that we'll do some of these recommendations in the next 5? And so, like I said, this is not to cast judgment, but it's just, this is kind of the state of where we are. And a new plan, we really have a great opportunity with a new plan, but this new plan has to really appreciate the context
Chris, would it be like to get a working group together, or maybe participants from all of those committees? I mean, that's the part of the problem, when you have such bureaucracy, so many different committees involved with different things, would it make sense to have like a working group to try to like meet periodically to try to get the groundwork, and then they can go back to their board members instead of, that we can put the,
Yeah, no, that's a good suggestion. I think what I look to do is, really bring Serpent into that conversation and see what's worked well in other communities. Again, obviously, we want to make sure that any activity they do, it's productive, it's respectful of your time, especially, there's a lot of meetings that we have to go to. So if there is, different forums where, we can have conversations like this, but then maybe there's a designee, like you said, from each group that goes back and kind of just gets those updates from Serpent on the progress they've made.
I did that with the recreation plan, I believe.
Open space.
Yeah, the open space, they had a working group, they had a couple of interns that kind of led the discussion, led the meetings,
Yeah, and so I think,
Pretty proactive.
I would think with that, there's definitely the opportunity there. And again, as Buddy said, I think, whatever those goals are in the upcoming plan, I'm gonna do everything I can to make sure that if they're being recommended, it's because we really strongly believe that they're achievable.
What Buddy said about zoning, I think that's gonna be the ground zero of just about
That's a big
everything.
one.
it often is, yeah.
The zoning in the town is, for years, we've gone in one direction with, instead of having sprawl, very open, larger lots, and it's almost, again, financially, it doesn't make any sense for any developer to come in, try to buy a piece of property and put something like affordable housing in there where it's gonna get crushed, with, the cost of building it, and then the money you're gonna have to charge and the subsidies, so I think zoning is a big thing to start off with.
Well,
Yeah, we got the commuter rail, which is actually really gonna happen. This is kind of, I'd look at, looking at your market trends in housing and,
but look at Milton. Milton's fighting it.
yeah.
And Milton's gonna, and I meant to bring it in. Milton they may lose.
Yeah, and then there'll be, I think there's certain sanctions that then go
Yes.
into place and stuff. But the pressures, on the housing in town is just gonna continue to go up, and, so, the one thing I would just suggest is adding the housing authority to that list of participants and stuff.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate that. And I one other point on this is, that was an omission, I apologize. I put in this application because, again, I really want to make sure that, there was a plan to fund this, especially going into this calendar year. With that being said, Serpent did also inform me, they have a grant round coming up later this month. Now, my hope would be, if I can get the full funding amount through them, I'm gonna go to them first and try to apply for that. If they can only issue partial funding for it, again, I really wanted to have a plan for this just because of how important it was.
What was the total cost of the plan again?
Just under 45. So my application was for 25 through CPC. But the full plan, again, it was always my intention to apply for either partial funding or full funding through Serpent for the remainder.
Questions on the presentation? Further questions?
No, very good.
So we are actually kind of then sliding into agenda item number 5. Because what I had mentioned to Chris is, we could take up, there's two things. One is the housing production plan, and could there be $25,000 in CPA funds, or our administrative budget, which is eligible or allowed, we're authorized to be able to spend on planning and things like that. And then the DCTV, if you want to just talk for a moment on the DCTV building and the request there.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So back in 2016, they had a firm go in and look at the old town hall building, the DCTV building, and what repairs and capital improvements were needed on the site over time. Now, again, just with the way the world is right now and the economy, those cost estimates are not really as accurate as they were back in 2016. And so this application, what it would do, would allow us to go out and get cost estimate updates for the various recommended repairs that were suggested back in the original study in 2016.
Right, and that was approximately, 4,000 or something?
4180.
4180, yeah.
And I got Peter here who can also
So, buddy, just,
speak to that.
can we get a little bit more detail, so I'm a little bit, and this request is gonna come from our administrative budget?
So, yes, so that's for the committee to consider. Things like cost studies, plans, those kind of investigative things, the CPC administrative budget can be spent on those kinds of items to see if a particular project might be feasible or something like that. So both of these would be eligible for our administrative budget. I had distributed via email the kind of a projection on our budget, our administrative budget this year. And my estimate based on legal costs to date, and the fact that we still have the archaeological survey that we're paying for through our administrative budget, is we probably have about $10,300. Looks like that's the projected surplus from our approved administrative budget. So, on the one hand, I don't think we can afford, we don't have the funds for the study, the production plan, but we do have funds that we probably will have, enough money to do the DCTV cost, update the cost kind of estimate for that building.
And that estimate is
4180
For doing that.
To do this study.
4,100 or
for the
40?
services. 4180.
Okay.
So, so that's something we could consider. And then in terms of the production plan, it may make sense, we don't have the funds, in our administrative budget this year. I think my thought, I think I had shared with you, Chris, was it, two ways to go here. The town could submit an application for $25,000 that would go to June town meeting and get approved, and then as of July 1, the funds would be available for the plan. Or we could go to town meeting and boost our administrative budget request to cover the 25,000. But that would be available July 1st as well. So I think kind of, it's probably, from a town meeting point of view, it's probably easier to understand and support a project request than
And administratively, yeah.
raising our
Yeah.
administrative budget, kind of thing. And either way, the money's not available till July 1st, so. So that was my thought on that, and maybe,
Yeah, no, and so I
you might be fortunate with the Serped grant too, which would
That's
be
right.
great, you get started earlier.
that's right.
Or if you're just really short a tiny bit of money, maybe we could help it, down the road there.
There's no grants available through the state?
I'm sorry.
State, is there any grants available through the state?
Not right now, not for this activity.
This-
Yeah, they got nine C cuts, so there's not a lot of money available.
I know.
Yeah, that's right.
But the good news is that when we talked to Serped about the project, again, they've been working with us on this. They encouraged us to apply, and they said the application would score very highly if we put it in. So I'm very hopeful that we can get the full funding for it, but, just to make sure that we have a plan one way or the other, I just wanted to make sure we got this in.
So, buddy, the 25 is looking at, the proposal be for a town meeting proposal for that money, and the 41 would come out of administrative.
That's,
Theoretically.
we could consider that, yeah.
Okay.
And so what we need though is, it's a motion to do that.
Make a motion, that, two-part motion that we add to town meeting the 25,000 for the housing production plan, and we take the DCTV additional 4,100 out of our administrative budget.
4180, Joe. 4180,
4,180?
4,180.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay, Joe. Only $80.
He could pay $80 out of his pocket.
I second.
Discussion?
Question for discussion? So is the 25,000, do we need an application for that from the town or not? Like, you know how normally you have this application process, people submit, we approve like in March, I think, or whatever, then in June it goes on the town meeting. Does the town have to follow the same process as a regular applicant?
Yeah.
So we would have to have them do that?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I was gonna offer a friendly amendment to the motion of, to strike the language about the $25,000 plan, because that's just, the town will pursue that as an application, yeah.
All right, I'll amend the motion to lost 25 grand.
Yeah.
I'll drop it. I thought that there was, maybe I was wrong, I thought there was already an application in play for that.
There is, but I don't know in terms of your review process,
Right,
if
we
you're
have
gonna
to
look
go
at
through
those
the
as a
review
package
process. Right.
at a town meeting,
Yeah,
but it is there for when,
I'll amend mine,
Yeah.
I'll amend mine just to include just for the administrative portion of it only.
For the 4,180, okay.
Second.
All right, any further discussion? Yeah,
I'm not sure why we're taking that to town meeting and presenting it as it's the DCTV. It's the prerogative of the committee to spend the administrative budget
Right.
without going
right, so this is just, we're making this decision now.
to town. Yeah, well, I'm just questioning that, you know, how long have we been, what's the administrative budget been locked in at?
35,000 forever,
For how many years?
forever. We're allowed,
So it's
we're allowed to,
simply time for an increase, period.
yeah,
and go with that, and then we just, I mean, because we haven't taken a vote on this yet. Right? You know, we haven't got, and even for administrative requests, there's a process. It may not be as lengthy as an actual application. I haven't seen any paperwork on this request. We're verbally talking about it this evening. I'm not saying I'm opposed to it. I'm just saying that it seems as though there's not a need to mention DCTV at this point. It's our prerogative to ask for a request and spend it where we feel the need is throughout the year. And that could change based on our priorities. Right now,
What's he
we're
saying?
thinking,
I'm confused. What are you
Yeah.
saying? You're gonna go to town, you wanna go to town meeting and increase the administrative?
well, that's what the,
No, I amended it.
Oh.
The amendment now is purely, I took out the 25,000 for
Right.
town meeting for the separate article.
Right.
And it just addressed the more pressing matter of our administrative fund being used to.
okay.
DCTV.
I missed
No,
4,000.
no,
I misunderstood.
No,
the vote.
he made a
Yeah.
friendly amendment, and
Yeah,
his wife made some good cookies, so I agree with him.
misunderstood.
That's why I was getting confused, John.
Yeah, no,
Okay.
No, my
The
fault.
motion
I was
is
confused
purely
at
for the
the,
4180 for the DCTV rehabilitation
From the admin.
from the
from the
admin
admin.
The admin
portion.
portion, yeah,
Correct.
yeah,
Yeah, the other part.
Okay.
And that's just simple a vote of.
Yeah.
correct, correct.
No town meeting a vote, okay.
All right,
Increase it.
so any further discussion? Are we ready to vote? Okay, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? No? Okay, great. So, that's approved, and then I think what we would be looking to you is obviously to manage, kind of the whole procurement and securing the services and keeping us informed.
Yep.
Of how that's going.
Happy to do so.
Okay, great. So I want to move on to item 6 and ask Chris, he's been here a long time. And so we'll just jump over, on item 6, project updates, just jump over to the Dias Landing, the seawall. And then, Chris, I think you are released after that.
No problem. So this is a project that was a holdover from this past year. My predecessor largely was part of this. So the project itself was looking at design and permitting for a seawall over at the Dice Landing and Apponeganset Park. Obviously, with the recent storms, you know how bad it can get over there. Through this project, they looked at, different alternatives, specifically nature-based solutions versus a seawall per se. It had gone, they went out there, they did assessments, they put forward a plan. When it came time to present that plan to various stakeholders, again, my understanding from the time is there was some disagreement as to the plan and reservations about the ultimate design. Unfortunately, based on where we were with the grant project, where we were with the grant project timeline from the state on this project, there wasn't enough time to draft a new scope of work, have it approved, come up with a new design, go through the stakeholder process, and ultimately get the permits approved within that 60-day window. So what we decided to do instead was talk to the state and close out the grant, knowing that we didn't complete the full work as intended. The idea was, and this was from the recommendation from the state, is really come back with a fresh look, knowing early on we have to have more stakeholder involvement from the get-go. There's a lot of different user groups down there, and we want to make sure ultimately with whatever design is proposed down there, it's something that works for the area. So, this was the case. I think in your packet you have the case study that we had submitted to the state. In addition, it was provided here, just explaining the project, the goals, and kind of what were the outcomes. It's unfortunate we never like to turn back money, but we also want to make sure we were in good standing. So we closed it out on time, and looking forward, we'll hopefully have a project scope of work that we can come up with in the future that, we'll see this project move forward.
Questions?
So we got a copy of the Dyes Landing Coastal Resilience Design
Yeah.
Case Study. This is not the closeout report you're submitting to the state, is it?
This is what they required for the closeout. So this was actually sent in June this past year, because our grant timeline matched the fiscal year. So, every grant kind of has a couple different requirements, including drawdown requests and things of that nature, but then the final report is this case study.
And this has already been submitted?
This is submitted and accepted.
So this is just an FYI? I mean, are we taking an action on this? I'm not
So,
understanding.
well, you'll see that there's some money that then is returned to the CPA, to the CPC, for those unspent. And so the one question, so a couple of questions I had. One was, so the town will need to go back out again. Is that to submit another proposal to the seacoast or the coastal zone or whatever that is?
Yeah, so we look to a
Okay.
grant agency at upcoming grant programs. Again, just through the feedback when we had submitted this, their suggestion was, hey, kind of have a consensus going in as to the design you're leaning towards, and then obviously the technicals and the permitting piece of it, you'll figure out later on. When we develop a future scope of work, we would take all of that survey and stakeholder commentary that was done as part of this last session, and that'll just be backup documentation when they go and develop the new proposal. But essentially, it's going to be its own project from the get-go, because they will have to go and develop a new design.
And the differences of opinion are most centered around a natural versus a,
I don't think it was natural, unnatural. I think it was,
Unusual.
so I don't know, I didn't see the final design
I
myself.
saw the
Yeah.
plans, and we, on the park board, we gave them some of our revisions, and they never got back to us.
Okay, yeah.
Things that they were recommending was unacceptable.
Yeah, so unfortunately, when I came on, there was a little gap in time in terms of the project management on this. And so, again, we were unable to, with that timeline that we had through the grant fund, to develop that new scope of work that included additional, stakeholder meetings and revisions to the plan, so.
And the plan expanded. Originally, it was just a seawall. It started from the cabana all the way around to the landing portion. And that was the original scope of service, and it morphed a little bit bigger from there.
Yeah.
With different ideas and different things. It was just not acceptable. What we bought onto, what we agreed to originally when it was brought to us, was that we agreed that seawall area should be repaired, modified, to take care of it, because that's what was being decayed.
Yeah,
And somehow it took a left-hand turn, and they approached us with this project that was, again, it was DOA. It was not gonna move any further than that, as far as we were concerned.
yeah, and, when we look at future grant opportunities, again, just based on those, conversations that have been had to date, the grant that we apply through was really focused on nature-based solutions. So I think through all the proposals, and they looked at it through a lens of, again, how can we reduce the man-made structures, if you will, and return to some form of a natural state. Now that eventually that might not work, that might not be the best avenue for funding in the future, but we know that now. And I think, again, as we go forward, we develop that new scope, at least for me, if I'm working on that, I'll know going in what I think, will work, yeah.
Sometimes you have to reverse engineer it and figure out what's gonna get funded, and then figure out how you can, get there.
Yeah.
So,
And sometimes too is, until they go out on the site and they, do the field surveys and they look at the different JS layers, you know, what they think they're gonna get for a design might not actually be practical when they say, oh, we thought we could do this, but nope, that's out the window, now we have to, you know, now here's probably our best bet to again, be in line with the lens that they were looking at this project through. It didn't work out, again, we don't like giving back money, but I wanna make sure there's a project that works and
So is
for
it,
everybody.
so is it now in the town's court to develop a closer or a consensus around the kind of solution or the range of solutions that could be acceptable, and then go out and, you know, with a,
Yeah, I think there would, you know, to really kickstart that process again, it would bring all those different stakeholder groups, you know, our waterways group, our park board, our town administration, you know, perhaps public safety, you know, might need a part in that. And really just have a conversation about the design, the needs, the biggest issues for the area. And again, then it really just comes down to funding, unfortunately, is if this is a grant-funded project, you know, we're gonna do our best to make sure whatever we apply to aligns with really what our ultimate goal is. And maybe, again, it's something that might come up on capital in the future, just again, depending on the, you know, desire of the town or the need. You know, but we'll keep our eyes open.
the other question I had is, so we have outstanding the Dias Landing expansion project.
Yes.
Can that project go forward without a plan or design of how that seawall, all of that's gonna work?
Yeah, I can. So the structure itself, it's that, I guess that section of the landing, really has been designed out, and it's been reviewed by the state. I believe they got their Chapter 91 license approval, in hand in the last month or two. You know, with that, they were really waiting for that before it could proceed. But my understanding now is that it's just a matter of signing on the engineers to do the bidding of the project and the construction administration. So I think that's sitting with our office just to make sure we're following procurement guidelines. But then after that, you know, I expect that project to move forward, you know, probably later this spring.
You don't think it'll create a conflict with
No.
what's gonna happen to that seawall?
No, because, you know, with that plan and any proposal that we put forward, you know, we would look at existing conditions of the site. And certainly, you know, there's certain things that aren't gonna be moving anytime soon, and that's one of them.
Didn't the harbor master say that there was gonna be a study done on, the Dias Landing? I think $160,000 study done on the Dias Landing.
So that is actually something that's gonna be coming to you part of next week's deadline. So we did receive some state funding to do a master plan of the entire site. Again, just bringing stakeholders and saying, hey, this is an area of town that is getting a lot more use by the public. And when we look at the configurations of the site, eventual capital improvements of the site, you know, is there an opportunity to look at that comprehensively?
So that is the study that's being done?
That's a study that we got funding for.
Right.
But we're gonna be coming before you at a future date, and I don't wanna get too off topic, but we'll be coming forward for a future date for the matching funds for that state grant. But yes, we hope to have that study, done later this year and finalized.
So, okay. So
Yeah,
it's
so
not-
there's kind of
it's
like
not
a-
been done then.
No, hasn't been done, but I think there's the envelope of the Dias Landing that we're talking about, and then there's the different uses and the infrastructure on the site itself, which that will be the focus of that study.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Any other questions? Great, thank you very much.
Thank you. I'm sorry if I took up too much time here,
No.
but
Thanks,
No,
Chris.
not at all,
Thank you.
not at all.
thank you all. And if there's anything else, any questions, I'll send that information over, but happy to come back anytime and I love talking about projects.
All right, great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
If we go back to item A, Russell Mills Land Conservation Project, just an update there. This is the one in which the state was holding back on the conservation restriction, feeling that it was not properly presented for town meeting approval. So I think Savastano's office had worked with the state, had several conversations, and my understanding is that the state has agreed to move forward with reviewing and approving the conservation restriction for that land acquisition as presented, with the understanding that the town, that we will no longer have, that CPA funds can no longer be used for purchasing conservation restrictions that are held by another party. And that was the piece that the state flagged. I think in this project, the ENIAC was, that was the issue that they flagged. And they felt that the warrant, the original warrant, was not clear that the funds were going to the town and for the town to purchase the conservation restriction. So, in the future, we just, a land acquisition, say from DNRT, would need a conservation restriction, and that would go through the town, and the town would purchase, would use the CPA funds to purchase the restriction from DNRT, with DNRT having acquired the property. So
That's
it's,
confusing.
yeah, and we haven't always done it that way.
That's confusing to me.
We have always made sure
Right.
that the CPA funds had produced restricted properties that had public access, and that the CPA funds never exceeded the appraised value of the land with the restriction on it. So in all other regards, we have been careful about that. And the state has approved those transactions. But going forward, the message is that it is the town that purchases and holds the restriction. So,
So who,
And then who has oversight?
yeah,
I never understood it, because sometimes, sat through a lot of these, sometimes the town would hold it, and sometimes DNRT would hold
Right.
it.
Yeah.
Well, Buzzards Bay Coalition,
Right.
I never
That's not
really
happening anymore now.
had a clear reason why, but
But the biggest thing for me is who has oversight. I mean, we
Well,
made a
in this case, it
mistake
would be
of
like the town.
having the Farm Bureau oversee the Schofield property, and, that wasn't our decision, I think that was a
Yeah.
select board decision, but what a mistake that was.
So the Conservation Commission.
And do
is
we have the
holds-
expertise to do that, and say, well, we'll hold it, well, who's got that expertise?
Well, it's the Conservation Commission, so they can hold a conservation restriction.
So
And
they-
their agent, Mark, can go out and fulfill. If the town, so like in a situation like where the town is acquiring a property, like Pascomanskett, in that regard, you can't hold a restriction on yourself because you'd be conflict of interest, you're monitoring yourself. So in that regards, when the town acquires Pascomanskett property, the conservation restriction on the property will be held by Buzzards Bay.
Third party, like,
Yeah. But the CPA funds are only for the town to acquire the property. They don't flow to Buzzards Bay.
for the,
So
for
the
the
town
restriction.
is acquiring the property, and that's fine. The town has an interest in the restriction, then is owned, is held by the
so
coalition.
we give the money to the town.
correct.
Okay,
Yeah,
confusing.
yeah. So, I think probably, Kyle, probably at some point, I would come to a Conservation Commission and just kind of like try to get on the agenda, just to go over that and say in the future, we may not have, these projects may not have always come to the Concom to be hold the restriction and essentially the town be the applicant, but
I'll let,
in the
I'll let
future.
Mark and Mike Kehoe.
Yeah,
know that-
yeah, and I'll send him an email, and say at some point, there's no urgency to
That
this,
it's
but
coming.
probably good to
makes it more
understand why
difficult.
more of these things are gonna go their direction in the future. And it creates a little bit of an issue for, say, like a DNRT and how they've typically done business, because that means, if I understand this right, that means, say, if I'm gonna buy a piece of property for, $100,000, and then, there's gonna be a restriction for 50,000, the property's gonna be appraised at 50 grand once the restriction's on it. I've gotta go to closing with $100,000.
Yes,
Right.
right.
After closing,
It's worth it.
the town will give me 50 for the conservation restriction. But
They're gonna have to put-
after
they're gonna
closing.
have to pull
So
the
those are
money up
little
front.
technical details that can,
Yeah,
it looks like it's all on paper, but as Michael,
Sounds like the state's,
Michael's well aware, that can
the
be a
state's
little
hip to,
that's-
these organizations
bugger. Yeah,
going with the state money,
yeah,
you
yeah,
know?
yeah.
It's confusing.
So,
It is what it is. I
but
guess.
the nice thing is, the state is moving forward, and that'll wrap that up, and then, I think we're withholding.
It's cleaner for the town, it just makes it more difficult for some of these other organizations. They're gonna have to come up with.
It
Yeah, it's a
is
little
cleaner
tricky
for the-
about how
yeah,
to
it
do
is
that.
Do
cleaner
some
for the
creative
town.
Doing
financing.
that closing, yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
But it is cleaner for the town.
Yeah, it's cleaner for us. I mean, I could see with the state, I mean, now that you explained it, I could see that, it's
Yeah.
cleaner for us. And just the other organizations are gonna have to make sure they have more money up front
I mean,
in
these
order to.
acquisitions are in the
Right.
millions
Yeah.
now, I mean, Ocean View Farm, what was that, almost $5-6 million?
Yeah,
Wow.
it's be intriguing.
That was crazy.
Yep.
That was.
The other thing I have here is, and I had sent you all a list of current, active projects, which is something we try to do about once a year. Home rehab. So the first several, home rehab, are the home rehab program, and those are ongoing. And so there's no action we need to take in those regards. We funded, we capitalized the home rehab program, and as Chris gave us a report, they've made 15 or so loans, and they've got 8 in the wings, and hopefully those will go through. But all of that is ongoing. The dog park, we still have outstanding, a grant there, for $291,670. We, extended the MOU, and so that expires in December of '24, so there's nothing we need to do with that, and I think Tim's moving that up in his priorities. Mendes Montero, outstanding, on the initial grant of about $55,843. We just had a $32,000 invoice we approved. We need to extend that, grant term, and I'm recommending, extending that grant term to, August 2024. So, that grant term wrapped up, we previously extended it, that wrapped up in December. But the project is still moving forward. Pontiac, the seawall, we've just heard, that they have gone as far as they can go. There is an unexpended balance of $15,543, so our action would be to vote to recapture it. And basically, that money then just rolls back into the open space recreation reserve for future projects. Historic preservation, they have outstanding of records. This is the old marriage and all of those old records that were preserved. There's an outstanding balance of $79.32 that we can recapture for historic preservation reserve. We have the Dias Landing marina expansion, which has not moved forward. So we need to extend that MOU for another year, which actually bring it out to about November 24. The land conservation project, I would suggest, or I recommend just extending it to October 2024. That just gives it another year, but hopefully it'll only be about another 3 or 4 weeks before that gets a restriction approved. But Heritage Trail, that needs to be extended to November 2024. And then we have 500,000 of the most recent Mendes Montero. That's good until next August. And then I'm working to get the MOU and the grant agreement on those last 2 projects. So I just need a little bit of information from the 2 sponsors, and then we'll get those signed and stuff. So any questions on kind of that?
The Mendes Montero house,
Yeah.
did they get all their other funding that they were counting on?
The next thing they have to do is put the project out to bid,
Okay.
and then, because then they will know if they got enough money, with the construction. So they have state grants and they have state approval, but they have to now put the thing out to bid and see if the numbers are gonna work.
Yeah, that's what they were asked to do,
Yeah.
it's my understanding.
What's that?
From DHCD had asked them to go out and get new pricing, basically.
Yeah.
You know, update their pricing.
Yeah,
That's what
update the
they're doing right
prices, yeah.
Need a motion for these extension, buddy, or is this gonna be?
Yeah, let's do them one at a time, if folks are fine with that. And so the first motion would be to extend the original Mendes Montero house agreement to August of 2024.
Make that motion.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, okay. The next would be a motion to recapture $15,543 from the town for the Ponegasset Dias Landing seawall study.
Motion.
Second.
Okay, any discussion on that? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? No. Historic preservation, historic records preservation, that's the town, outstanding balance of $79.32. And this would be a motion to recapture those funds for the historic preservation reserve.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Dias Landing Marina expansion, we've heard that that is still active and moving forward. So this would be to extend the term to November 2024.
Motion to extend.
Second.
Any discussion?
I have a question,
Mm-hmm.
only as to, I thought at one time when they were here, that there was a deadline on this Dias motion, the monies. Do you know? Remember?
Seaport Marine.
I think they felt like
Yeah.
they had some, because they had this other seaport or
Yeah.
whatever grant, that they had to be able to
Right.
spend money, but they're in a position, I think, once that MOU got worked out a couple of months ago, they could,
They had to get that chapter 91, he mentioned it, whatever they needed
Oh, I
from
see.
them, so
Yeah.
that was, but I think the money-wise, they may have asked, I thought they said they it got an extension from the state.
Okay.
Okay,
All right.
yeah.
That's, nothing else then.
So, all in favor of extending the marina expansion project term to November 2024?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No, it's unanimous. Russell Mills Land Conservation Project, keeping things simple, just extend it for one more year, though we do expect the project to wrap in a month. But a motion to extend that term to October 2024.
Motion.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? Okay, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? It's unanimous. Dartmouth Heritage Trail, extend that project for another year. I think they will need another year, but it just, for the record keeping, it makes it easier.
Motion.
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? No. Okay, those are the things that we need to do. What I typically do then is send letters with the new term date, and then I write to Donna Fernandez on the recaptures, and she moves the money. Excellent. Other thing we have here is, I came up, I'm a year and a half out of being a state bureaucrat, but it didn't take me too long to come up with a reason to have a form. So, just want to put that out there. It just was,
Love a good form.
flowed like poetry, But when you look at the grant agreement, the language is that when we get an invoice, we also get an update on the project. Here's where the project is, any barriers or things that we've run into, current status, those things. And what do we expect? This is in the next quarter. So that's all in these agreements and stuff, but very inconsistent what we get. And so sometimes, I think what inspired me was the coastal study, because we really weren't aware that it kind of hit a dead end and couldn't be completed. And so it's probably something as a committee having oversight of these agreements, probably would have been good to know that from the town. So I came up with this form, and the idea is, and people can be as brief as they need to be, just touch base on, so anytime you invoice us, they would just staple this to the invoice, and it would just say, here's what this is for, see attached for detail. But it's an opportunity to flag any issues. No issues, just put, there are no issues. But this would be the place where things like budget issues could be flagged, and, et cetera, and just put us a little bit on notice about the status. And what next? If you don't get an invoice, then we need to get one of these at least once a quarter. So for projects that haven't moved forward, at least we get some communication and say, here's where things stand. Use the same form and just
Could
basically.
we attach that form to the project application, so it would be part of it, and they would be their responsibility instead of us tracking them down? They would have to send it to us?
Yeah, so the content of this form is described in one of the exhibits to the agreement. But yeah, and I think in the future, then we can just attach the form and say, submit this.
Due dates.
But we're still gonna have to check on them if they don't do it.
Yeah,
I
Well,
mean,
we would just send if we don't get it in the
That's what I
quarter, you
mean.
just send a letter.
Right, and so we can get better, about that, and I think one of the things about having a form is it's a little easier to know what you got, and if you didn't get it.
Can I ask
Yeah.
a dumb question, because I guess I just haven't been on the committee long enough, but when they submit a disbursement or request for funding, is it in the rears, are they getting reimbursed for cost
Yeah.
at that point?
Yeah.
Okay, it is. It's
Yeah.
not like, oh, here's our invoices, we need to pay these in 30 days, like we're requisitioning for
Yeah,
these
no,
costs.
that's
Okay.
for services rendered.
The service is already
Yeah.
complete. So it should be easier then for them to document than what has been expended, because they
Yeah.
already expended.
Yeah, we're,
And,
we're getting good background documentation.
Yeah.
What we're not getting is the overview
right, oh, right,
piece
more
of
the
it.
narrative
Yeah.
piece of it.
So when you see, and I think when you see those invoices we're signing and stuff, we're getting decent detail. What we're not capturing is just the overview, and sometimes there's another part of the story.
I need to ask a question, because I
Yeah.
haven't, I'm getting confused. When you, this is terrific, but if they don't send it in, is this something that Michelle charts out on all these projects that we're working? Well, I'm using you, I'm sorry, Michelle. Buddy, who
Right.
charts all this out, and is there due dates, and if we don't get it, who does that? That's what
That
I'm,
would either be Michelle or I, we're gonna come up
Okay.
with something that's easy for Michelle to do, or it's something I would do,
mean-
right?
No, that's
We-
my
but-
question.
But that's right, we have to
Automatic
track that.
email. I mean, you can have an automatic Outlook, just generate an email to them quarterly.
Can you make it a requirement to receive the funding, or is that something that has to go through town council?
I think that's a good idea.
No, I think going forward, if we don't have these
Submit
attached to
this quarterly.
invoices, just like we cannot pay the
Right.
invoices until we have
I
it.
think that's a good
Yeah.
idea, that's a good idea.
And then the thing to keep track of is just that we're hearing from everybody, at least
Right.
once a quarter.
Right. That's what you, that's my question, you have to,
Yeah,
yeah.
John.
So I'm glad you prefaced this with, you had a state job and, you come from this bureaucracy.
We just,
This is what you did. And I
Yeah.
can appreciate that, but
Yeah.
personally, I hate bureaucracies.
Yeah.
I hate forms, I hate deadlines, I hate the government.
You're retired.
I hate the government,
retired.
imposing, it starts at the town,
Yeah.
the next level is the state is off of where you're, and the next level is federal. They make it so difficult for people. Why? What's the end game here, buddy, when we do these kind of things?
Yeah.
One thing, we're creating work for ourselves. Who's gonna do that? When is it gonna do? Who's gonna police it? And then when it doesn't happen, what are we gonna do? We didn't get a report from the dog people this month. Let's go after them and find them. Really, what are we gonna do? You mentioned that, and a great example is the Dias Lane. So what would have changed if we had known that 6 months ago? Nothing. So I don't know why we're setting up this bureaucracy when many of this is just strictly volunteers. This isn't a multi-million-dollar project that maybe the state is dealing with, who's got all kinds of consultants and money that, the proponent can go after and tap. These are just average folks sitting at home trying to put up some signs across the town, and we just keep throwing more bureaucracy and forms out there for them, and they're just volunteers trying to do something nice for the town. I don't know why we want to go there. I don't know why we want to put this on ourselves. I don't know why we want to require them to do. And then I asked the committee, what are we going to do when it doesn't happen? We're not going to do anything. We're going to waste 10 minutes, not even 10, we're going to waste 45 minutes talking about, we didn't get a report from the dog people, what are we going to do? And in the end, we're not going to do anything. We're going to put in to send them a letter, waste your time sending a letter, and we won't hear anything for 3 months, and then what are we going to do there? Nothing. So my point is, why? Why do we want to impose it? I'm opposed. I'm
can respond to
opposed
that,
to
but-
more bureaucracy.
Yeah,
in my
Mike.
opinion.
So I can totally see your point, John, because I sort of agree, because I'm the guy in my job, I have to fill out all these forms
Yeah,
all the
yeah,
time,
yeah.
you know what I mean, to the state for different things. But I think, and again, I'm just trying to see both sides of this equation, and I think that if we're trustees essentially of a public pot of money, and the way I look at it is if you're gonna come to us and ask us to reimburse you for costs, it's a one-pager. I mean, again, it should be very simple, very easy to say, here's today's date, this is our request for funding, here's our backup, and, this is where the status is. We are at 50% complete, we're at 75% complete, or whatever, especially on a job like Montero Mendez, where it's sort of a construction project, or like, some of these other bigger projects that could lag for a long period of time, and then people might say to us as CPC members or whatever, hey, what's going on with that project? Why is it taking so long? And then all of a sudden, we don't know. And we're like, oh, well, aren't you on the CPC? Well, yeah, but
It's really just transparency to the taxpayer. At the end of the
it's
day.
one page, so,
We can
you know,
provide an
as long as
update.
we don't make it too egregious of like, having to put page, I'm okay, I'd be okay with it, but I get your point. If it's something like, hey, I'm trying to do the right thing and volunteering to put up the kiosks or whatever, but at the same time, it should be easy.
My point, right, it's a one-pager.
Right.
But, for someone who's involved in the bureaucracy world, it may take you 5 minutes to do that. Someone who's strictly a volunteer, who's out there with a shovel putting up signs and doing this, that could take them 3 hours to put
mean,
something together there.
if you
And
wanted
then you're
to-
expecting
if you
that to
wanted
be
to,
done every
You
quarter.
could restrict it under a certain dollar amount and over a certain dollar amount.
We could, but again, what's the end game? What have we done in the past that warrants this kind of oversight? Have we misrepresented the taxpayers? Have we not been transparent with the taxpayers? Have we not been wise in how we spend these dollars and how we recover this money?
I just think it's a
We're
question.
doing our job,
I think it's a question, John, like I asked about the Montero house, that's all. It's just bringing you up to date once a quarter.
No, and there's nothing wrong with asking.
That's all,
but-
I mean, that's a lot of money, $500,000.
And it's been going
Okay,
on since
I'm
2018.
I'm just
So-
bringing up, I'm gonna be outvoted, but I guarantee you, we're gonna be having a discussion down the road, and we're gonna realize, we haven't seen a quarter report in a year and a half. Geez, I guess we better
But we
get one.
won't have
What
that
are we gonna
discussion
do
because
when
we'll
we
know.
Right.
What's the
So-
consequences when they don't do it?
So I was a good bureaucrat. Because I paid attention to things like that. So I think part of what we have is sponsors left to their own devices. We aren't getting consistent updates, even when things actually are happening. And so this, I think, is going to simplify that for someone, as opposed to just a blank slate, like, we need to know what's going on with your project, and somebody's going to hem and haw about what is that, do I have enough detail, how much detail? I think this is going to help people keep it short and sweet. This is what, and it doesn't add to anything we haven't already said in our agreements that we need to know from them. So this is not additional information, this is not,
No, but
this is
you're-
information we haven't been
Missing
getting
my point. We have
consistently.
consistently
Yeah.
not been updated on our minutes. Some are
Right.
very good and some are others.
Yeah.
This requirement, it's not gonna change anything. The
Oh, I
people
think-
who,
I think it
the
will.
people who don't report us, I don't think are gonna do it
I think it
quarterly.
will.
Well,
And then
we
more
won't
importantly,
pay-
what
well, I
are we
think-
gonna do?
We're not
I
gonna
think
do
it will, because one, we won't pay the
Right.
invoice, and as soon as you don't.
Is that
pay-
what I bet you this committee will never do that.
Oh,
Yeah,
yes, we will.
I won't offer it, it won't be a valid invoice without it. You won't see the invoice.
No, but when they're not submitting invoices, there are some projects, we don't see anything for a year before we see an invoice. So what, again, is the end game? Are we gonna say, we're gonna pull money from you now because we haven't seen
I go to
anything in
Michael,
6 months?
we're stewards, we, town meeting, and that is, and you see the role of the committee even written in the law.
Right.
Is the committee then has this due diligence, this kind of fiduciary responsibility on behalf of the town to oversee.
And we've done a good job at that,
I think-
without adding more bureaucracy is my point.
I don't see this problem as that, Joe, I really don't.
So,
And,
yeah.
you always like to talk about the taxpayers, okay?
The what?
the people who are paying,
Isn't that what we're here for?
Yeah, but-
We're
Yeah,
representing the
exactly.
But
taxpayer.
that's what
We
I'm
should be
saying.
talking about the average
that's what
Joe.
I'm saying. I mean, I asked a question today. Okay, because I wanna know, about the Montero House, and I'm on the committee. So if somebody came up and said, hey, you know, I think that once a quarter is not gonna kill, and if somebody, Michelle, Buddy, says, look, we didn't get this, writes a little letter to them, and if we don't get an answer or response from them, then we gotta look into it a little bit.
Because ultimately, it does come around to, I think, what, again, Michael said, you know, the town can
Right.
legitimately look to us to say, so what's going on with that thing that I've
Right.
never seen anything happen with?
Right.
And it's, we are better, I think, as a committee to be in a position is, this is what we know about it. Or we've been trying to know about it and we're not getting response.
Buddy, how many, like, right now, active projects, what was it, 3, 4? It was like, you know,
Let's see, yeah, what is that?
so I'm wondering, because when they applied for the funds, they must have given us, like, contact information.
Oh, yeah, no, we have
So we have
contact.
like an email, we could do like
Oh,
a
yeah.
blast email.
Yeah,
Once a quarter and say, reminder.
Yeah.
Quarterly reports due March 1st or whatever it is, you know what I mean, like, and to your point, John, if we don't get them, well, I mean, I guess we're not gonna be, you know, real enforcement agents here, but at the end of the day, it makes, you know, they're gonna look bad and,
Right.
you know, and when they go to ask us for the money, we're gonna say, well, gee, we haven't seen a report from you, what the heck's going on?
And if we're gonna hold them hostage, of course, we're gonna get the report. But in the meantime, if they're only sending an invoice once a year,
Yeah.
there's no penalty. And, you know, the last thing, you know, Buddy needs and Michelle needs is another task to monitor and, to watch. I'm
yeah, but I have.
I'm obviously gonna be outvoted, so
No,
there's no
that's fine.
sense in debating it anymore, you know.
I do want you,
it's-
I tried
you
to
know, but,
keep it so it least a burden as possible, right? So I want to acknowledge that everything you say, I take to heart because I think that is, this isn't about making work for people and stuff. I think there's reasons why we need it, and this, I think, will make it a little bit easier for people to know how to respond and keep it short and sweet. So I've tried to pay attention to that burden part of it.
I count 5 projects that, other than the housing thing, that are active.
It's not a lot. And it's a simple form. Even I could fill it out.
I'm not saying it is.
Very simple.
Right.
I just think that.
I'm gonna laugh when I say, hey, folks, where's our quarter report? What are you guys gonna do now?
You're gonna be waiting to tell us so.
I think that there's some.
And you're gonna, oh, you know, and then, hey, where's the quarterly report again?
Montero
You know?
for sure will send the reports.
But you will be very good on, and I'm not hoping this ever happens, you will be very good in the moment that someone comes to us after having been silent for a year and a half to tell us that the budget actually is double now. And you will be the first one to say, we've been asking you for the last year and a half to keep us updated. And you haven't said a word, and now you're gonna come to us and say, my budget's double now.
Or if someone comes back
You
and
will
asks,
not
well,
have this,
that's
you will
what-
not have the empathy as
No,
opposed to
'cause
the person who every quarter is saying, we are struggling with a budget, but we're dealing with it. We're now having some troubles with our budget. You will have empathy for that
No, no,
sponsor.
if the budget doubles, if the grant is a $500,000 grant, a double, but, sorry, it's $500,000. Go look for the other $500 someplace else.
Your
We don't have the
empathy-
authority to say, here's another $500,000 because their budget doubled.
I'm just saying, you will have a different view.
But if the project goes belly up because it goes up and we lost all that money.
Yeah.
I think that's another thing
Oh,
we think
yes.
about.
Okay, we should take a vote, though. I think we've
no,
we've
beat
well
a dead
stated
horse.
our positions.
Make a motion, we accept the, is this form a PDF form or a Word form, by the way?
It's probably a word form, yeah.
Yeah, maybe give it to the TikTok person, whoever the new person at town hall, maybe they can convert it to a PDF.
Uh-huh.
It's easy to do,
Fillable form.
PDF, yeah.
Yeah, that's not.
That's so easy to do.
It's above my pay grade.
Okay.
I second.
Second?
Second.
Okay. All, any further discussion?
We need
Okay.
the motion, Joe.
All in favor?
I do.
Aye.
Aye.
And opposed?
One opposed.
Okay, thank you.
Wrench.
I do not have an update on the survey. The CPC web page, I think we've got that, I've responded, I got that forwarding, so is our inbox now kind of, is that kind
It's
of
about
working?
back to me, I'll check.
Okay.
I'll check with him.
We think we have the inbox thing figured out. How when someone responds to the inbox, it then forwards to Michelle and I.
And, yeah,
That there's, that email then gets automatically forwarded to Michelle and I, so. So the next thing is working on getting some, what we've said in the past, I can kind of turn my sights now towards, the town now has its platform kind of figured out. Getting up there where you can get links to past projects, see information on them. We're getting better about having applications now up on the webpage, so.
Quarterly updates on the webpage.
Yep, quarterly updates on that.
I'm gonna make a motion.
Oh, you're a troublemaker.
It's gonna be the Sousa updates.
It'll be the Sousa reminder, guaranteed. You know, it won't be quarterly updates and, hey, I'm just reminding you
Sousa
guys,
reminder.
you're overdue your quarterly reports.
Oh, my,
What are you gonna do now?
oh my goodness gracious, okay,
Have a voicemail by his voice, melodious voice. Hi.
yeah. Okay.
two.
So, upcoming meetings. February, so proposals are gonna be, are due in about another week or so, I think. So we'll all be getting, proposals. And February is our meeting date to review the proposals, come up with questions, information we need and stuff like that.
At the 13th?
Yeah, I think so.
Is it
Yep.
the 13th?
Is February 13th, the agreed date?
And that'll be our main order of business. And then, I'm thinking, maybe something like April might be a good, time to meet with, or have folks from the Ag Commission. We wanted to touch base with them once a year. April may be a pretty decent, because we're done with proposals. Usually we're done with proposals and warrant article recommendations. So if folks are fine, I was gonna throw that out to the Ag Commission and say, hey, is April a time we might do that annual joint meeting for either all or part of our meeting.
The 9th,
Yeah, would it be April 9th?
yes.
That's actually good.
So I'm gonna check with them.
When's the election?
Well, we're now on that, usually that's that
We have the
first Tuesday.
primaries, right? We have the primary coming up. That's
Usually the first week of April, isn't it?
Yeah, usually first.
I think, the
Is
primary.
it March 5th, the primary? Yeah, all right. We got 4 this year, I just wasn't sure if the April was March.
And then I thought, a future housing topic, perhaps it would be good now, so we've kind of got a sense of where we are with the housing production plan. It might be a good time to talk to some folks who, maybe partners in housing. I think that's one of the questions we had for them is, what's their vision? Do they see themselves as a sponsor of affordable housing, developer of affordable housing in the town? Do they see themselves doing other projects? Neighbor Works, maybe have a couple of people like that come in. Neighbor Works, which is a regional nonprofit, thoughts about, with that question of, so why don't we see activity from?
Does it have to be a nonprofit?
Well, I'm just thinking of people who typically develop,
Well, I mean,
Did you
Michael-
say somebody was developing something?
There was a proposal for a profit on Reed Road years ago to
Yeah.
do something affordable the town was gonna partner with, but it fell apart.
Like the one off of Ventura.
Oh, Ventura, no, that's,
Oh, whatever
that
we
was,
want is,
40B, I thought somebody was proposing on 40B. Okay.
I mean, I develop affordable housing for a living, and, I mean, I can give you my suggestions, but at the end of the day, I guess it would be good to hear what other people have to say too. I would never do a project in my hometown, though. I'm not that dumb. But, what's that?
You're knocking on your door.
Yeah, I don't want that, yeah.
Other people don't have a problem with it.
But, you know, again, just my personal experience, you know, I've had some good towns I've worked with and some bad towns, and it really comes down to is towns that have their act together, they know what they want, they know why they need it, they've done the research, they figured out what their affordable housing needs are. So that way, when you're applying for the funding, you know, the state doesn't say, oh, you're just trying to do elderly housing to get out of having kids in your school system, and, you know, we're on to you.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? So they want, so a good example of that was in a community, Foxborough. They did their homework. They have a housing production plan, like we were talking about
Yeah.
tonight, that documented the need. They have plenty of inventory for, you know, for families, for, you know, but it's the empty nesters that are moving out that they got nowhere to go. You know, they're house rich and cash poor. They don't have, you know, they want to downsize into an affordable, you know, unit, but they want to stay in Foxborough. But they were able to use data in their housing plan to document that need. So when we were brought in through an RFP process, when we went to the state, we were able to justify that. And it's like, no, this is a real need. Look, here's the data backs it up. And so I think like having your act together is huge, and then having everyone sort of agree on that. So that way, when we got there, it was like, oh my God, every town, whether it was the planning board, the ZBA, the planning department, the town administrator's office, everyone was working with us as if we were all on the same team. There was no daylight between us. We were all on the same page. And so that's probably one of the most best experience I've had recently was in the town of Foxborough. And
that was over 55?
yeah. It was-
So, Buddy, would it make sense to allow that first phase to continue, to see what he comes up with, what Chris comes up with the group? I mean, the working group, or whatever he decides to do, whatever they
No,
decide.
definitely this production plan is an important.
Would it be,
Piece.
see what,
Yes.
again, I kind of like what you're saying, is let's see what the interest is, let's see what they come up with before we start getting into a project or starting pushing things, but that quite honestly, we don't even know if the town really wants. So if they come back with a proposal, and they say, these are the needs, okay, well, now we can move forward and maybe meet with some other people, but at least let them do their homework first.
But-
Again,
But we also have that big problem with our sewer plant that we have.
well,
That's a major,
that's
major
what I'm saying,
problem.
there's so many unknowns, we've got zoning,
Sewer plant.
the sewer plant can't handle anymore, we've got the zoning issues, which really zone all of these developers out. Again,
It could very well be that this participation process in the production plan, you know, will be included, the Housing Authority and some others, but very well, organizations like Partners in Housing and NeighborWorks could be tapped as well for input. So,
yeah,
you know.
it would be through them, I mean, I think.
Right.
And I think that's, I mean, he's come forward, it sounds like he has at least an outline of what he wants to do.
Yeah.
And it's just a matter of seeing let's see who buys in. I mean, I think that's the key, because we talked about this at the beginning, when they brought it a couple of months ago, the buy-in. There are so many things that have to change at the town bylaw level, really for it to be profitable, or even probable to be done. I just don't. You know,
That may make sense.
I don't wanna spin on wheels for no reason, we got other things we could do, get those forms out, but,
Yeah, I think we're heading down the right track, but you know, and I have no doubt he'll succeed at putting together a plan. It's how it gets implemented and when it gets implemented. Now, as we heard from Mike, Foxborough has done a good job implementing it. That's the proof in the pudding.
Yeah.
We'll come up with a plan, and we'll agree on something. And let's say hypothetically, you know, we want affordable housing in town, and we want to exceed the 10%. We want to get up to 15%, and everybody buys into that, you know?
Yeah.
Well, then the implementation stage come by, and we said part of the plan is we wanna welcome with open hands a friendly 40B when they come into town. And the only people who have control of that is really the Board of Appeals. And 2 years after the plan is voted on, the Board of Appeals, and I'm
Right,
just hypothetically,
Right, yeah,
the
yeah,
Board of
yeah,
Appeals
exactly,
say,
exactly,
nah, we don't wanna approve that.
yeah.
Or the planning board,
Never the
said,
planning
oh, the planning board's gotta, change some zoning in order to get here, and they buy into this, but when it comes time to implement it, it's a different board, or it never gets implemented. That's where,
Yeah, and that's why I thought.
that's where, we gotta work together,
agree.
all the boards, you can't have somebody go rogue, after the plan is, that's the difficult part, is.
You're right,
is-
you're right. I thought
And how
it
do
was.
you get that? I don't know if the key is an administrator that can,
yeah.
pull that all together. I don't know.
a heavy
or
lift.
Is the key the select board to hold it all together and,
I
Right.
think,
It's
I
a
think
tough
you
one.
gotta have select board members that are just willing to lead on it. and-
Everybody's gonna pull in the right,
That's what
same
they want,
direction,
you know?
and that includes town meeting.
Yeah,
Yeah.
The wild card.
Yeah, they say a lot too.
Because all the zoning has to go in front of town meeting. They have to
and
approve
board
that.
changes.
Yeah.
So
Boards
you
change.
have
Yep.
people buy into this and 3 years later, the boards look totally different.
Right.
That's, and that's why I thought.
And
it was-
they all got different agendas now, so it's
thought it was
it's tough.
good to see, like, have this bit of a report card on the previous plan, right? Most things, pretty much all the recommendations didn't get followed up on. And so it does beg that question of, so who carries the ball over the course of 5 years? Because boards change, and I think it's good to know that
Maybe
the
that's-
last plan didn't carry much weight in this town.
You need
Now,
strong
we're gonna
leadership.
do another plan, because you're required to have a plan, but, for all the effort of doing another plan, what will it take to have more meaning for people,
What plan are you talking about?
the production plan. So
The
this
production.
production plan didn't hold much
Right.
weight, because none of the recommendations really got
Sometimes the
followed up
master
on.
plan doesn't hold much weight either.
Yeah, so
I mean, let's talk about that.
Again, you
who
can only
carries
do-
the ball? So we're gonna go through do another plan, and then what?
You can only complete what the town allows you to complete, what the people allow you to complete. That's the end of the day, that's the whole thing. If they don't want it, and we don't know, let the work be done, let's just see, put it out there, see, whether it be survey from the people of the town. I mean, you have to start somewhere, do that, try to get something there and see what their interest is.
Well, Joe, your point's a good one, so we can hold off on bringing folks in, and let's see what this process.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not adverse to talk to those people, I think it's great.
No, I
mean,
understand,
even-
yeah.
But I just think that we're gonna go through all of this and it's gonna be a failure in the
No,
process.
it should start where it should start with administration. Should be spearheading this, it shouldn't be us trying to pull,
Yeah.
and administration needs
And
to
I think
do
even the
that.
comments that I gave about my experience in, say, Foxborough, and I have other experiences in other communities that I can offer, I feel like the best place for me to express those thoughts and opinions and just, in my personal experience, would be through that planning process that he's talking about. So that way, whoever the consultants is, and they're putting together, their little, chalkboard that they're writing stuff up, and the charrette that they do, and they write everything down, and then they take all that stuff, put it in a blender, and they say, okay, this is what they,
Spit out the
this is
buzzwords.
this is what the town, says they want, this is what they need. How do we marry those two, and then what can we do locally through zoning, through permitting, through different things to try to get those needs and wants more in line? It's a process, it's messy because we're gonna have so many people with so many different opinions, and it's just gonna be, but that's what you gotta do.
It's actually a good process with that many people, that many opinions, because you're gonna get a real good product.
Right.
Once you're done, mixing the stew up, you're gonna get a real good product at the end.
Yeah.
Again, it relies to our administrators, our department heads. Those are the ones, I mean, for consistency, they're the ones that stick around the longest usually. And they're the ones that have to carry the torch and say, this is what we wanna do. Their board members hopefully lean on some of the
Yeah,
people.
they're not the policymakers, though.
Yeah,
that's-
but-
I get it, but if they get
That's
a
the
boards,
point.
I know like with Tim, when he says something to us, it makes sense, like he's done the research, so of course we're gonna support him. We'll argue, but we'll support, at the end of the day, our goal is to support our staff to say, okay, this is a good idea, let's go forward, we got your back, let's move forward. And I think that's what all these other boards have to do, once we get this information together and let them hash it out. I think it's great. Put them all in the same room, let them go at it. You know, because that's the best way to get the information out.
You also have to have, I think, a little more community involvement than we have. We don't have it in our boards. We don't, you know, we don't have it, period.
That's why we put the survey out to people. Let them see what they have to do.
All right,
But
we've had
that's
a
beyond our pay grade.
good, long meeting.
Good cookies.
Appreciate
Good cookies.
everybody's
Next
input.
time, coffee.
Yeah.
Gretchen, there's that
Okay,
molasses.
yeah, we'll work on the coffee.
Yeah. Milk, I want
No,
milk.
just-
I want milk in my
I
chocolate
think out
chip
of the
cookie.
administrative phone, we need like a Keurig here, just to.
Yeah, oh yeah, we're gonna cure it.
Yeah.
Great, thank you. So we are to meet next on February,
Do we have the motion to adjourn?
Did I say?
Change
Say
the day
13th?
before.
13th, I'm
Yes,
sorry.
13th.
February
It's April
13th.
9th.
All right, we'll have proposal. All right, so, vote, the motion to adjourn
Motion.
and seconded?
Second.
Second,
And
third, fourth.
discussed and voted.
Aye.
Aye, that's unanimous. Thank you.